Crank it up, let it roll. Stars and stripes in my soul. Steel toes on, boots in the gravel. Heartland truth on every channel. Open Bible, flag on the wall. We say what we believe or we don't talk at all. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the bell. try to shame every word we say, but we don't bow down. We just press play. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the bell. Hey, we won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. You can cancel the show, but not the crowd. We're still here, still talking loud. Hand of the free on every spell. Hit that mic, host, let the truth ring out. This is red, white, and raised hell. Cowboy hat, church bell can't scare us into silence. We were born to rail from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raised hell.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for being with us for this episode of Strictly Speaking Unfiltered. It is Thursday, the 23rd morning of the 7th month in the year of our Lord 2026. And I've got Dr. Piper waiting in the wings. He'll be with us in about a half an hour, a little earlier this morning than his normal Thursday visits. Usually I'm in the 8 o'clock hour, but we are going to be, well, he's got some things actually a little bit later in the morning, so he's got to come on early, and we certainly appreciate him doing that. Welcome to all of the crazy dancing fools in the chat. I love you guys. It just makes me laugh every time the music starts and I see the emojis. You guys are just cutting it. So thanks, everybody. Let me tell you what I want. I want to see you dancing in person under the pavilion in Middleburg Heights a week from this Saturday. So what are we, 9 days away? 9 days away, but I need you to register. There it is. Register by, that's a lot. I got to tell you, that's a lot. That graphic is a lot. It's just a lot of boom, a lot of this, a lot of that. Let me see if I can clean it up just a little bit. Slightly, a little bit more organized there. Yeah, I poked around with this a little bit. I want you to see 2026 candidates are going to be there. I confirmed, by the way, that Ohio's 7th congressional district representative, Max Miller, will be at this event. And if you've got questions for Max, I have questions for Max. About the Taking Care of America Veterans Act, America's Veterans Act, Taking Care of America's Veterans Act. That's easy for me to say, right? Anyway, he's going to be there along with Supreme Court Justice candidate Colleen O'Neill, a number of other candidates, and sitting elected officials are going to be there. It's going to be a great time, and I want you to be there, but you've got to RSVP to Meg by tomorrow, so before Saturday. All right. You see the number on the screen, 440-725-2243. Call that number and tell her whether you're coming. Remember, if you're an Unfiltered Insider, you get $5 off the admission price. And the admission price, by the way, is just going to go to pay for the food. It's going to be great. Barbecue chicken, burgers, corn. I mean, virtually everything you can think of for a great picnic. We were trying to put something like this together just as a core group. A couple of months ago, we were planning this, and it just turned out perfectly that John said, why don't you join our group? John Tamburello, by the way, of Middleburg Heights GOP. He said, why don't you bring your group to our group and let's do this? So that's exactly what we did. I'm co-hosting it. I'm looking forward to being there and to taking you through and introducing the folks. I'll give you some remarks of my own, which I hope will have some value. We'll have a whole lot of fun, and most importantly, great food. So please go ahead and hit that phone number. Text Meg or call Meg at 440-725-2233 and plan on being there next Saturday. It's going to be a great time in Middleburg Heights. Very much looking forward. But I need you to be there. Seriously, we want to pack this up. You want to know why? I want to treat this as almost kind of a small version of a GOTV. All right, get out the vote rally. I want to get people up and ready and excited for the fall to come. We're still in summer. This is August 1st. This is going to be held, but it's going to bring us just 3 short months away from the election. And I want to get people rallied. I want to get people fired up. I want to make sure, as I did at the end of the show yesterday, everybody who is kind of, in some sort of a malaise about the election in November and about whether or not they want to get out there and vote. No, again, we have to match their energy. We have to match the energy of the radical leftists. There's just no two ways about it. That's what we've got to do. And they are ready to crawl across the proverbial broken glass or cross the proverbial hot coals, whatever you want to call it, to get there to vote against the Trump agenda. Trump's not on the ballot, but the Trump agenda is quite clearly the agenda that we voted for overwhelmingly to implement back in 2024. It's now the last 2 years of it are on the way, and they're going to fight hard to stop us. So it is going to be of primary importance for us to match that energy. So be there with us on August 1st. Don't forget to hit that. And I'll try to remind you of that a little bit later as well. Dr. Piper will be here at 7:30. Dr. Piper and I are going to talk about a number of things, not the least of which will be the theme of this show. Now, prior to the promotion of the picnic, you may have seen this on the screen while you were waiting in the lead up to today's show. The Smithsonian's White Culture Checklist. This is extraordinary. They have decided that racism can only exist. It can only happen in one direction. That racism against ethnic minorities or racial minorities, like blacks or Hispanics or whatever, that's the only kind of racism that is real racism. That racism and discrimination against white people is not racism at all. And it is A-OK. This is what the Smithsonian, which is, in large part, the keeper of our history, if you think about what the Smithsonian does. And they're teaching new generations of young Americans to hate their race if they're light-skinned and to hate the race of other people if they're dark-skinned. White people must feel shame. Black people must feel anger and outrage. White people must be marginalized because black people have been in the past marginalized. This is all a part of the quote-unquote war on whiteness that I wrote about in one of the Strictly Speaking This Week newsletters. I want to say, I think 4 weeks ago, maybe. I don't have them all memorized because I put a lot of work into those and there's a lot of content. But about 4 or 5 weeks ago, we talked about the war on whiteness because there were new stories in the news that made that very, very evident. Which again is, if there's a war on any race, we have a massive problem in the United States of America. A massive problem. When there was segregation and Jim Crow laws and there was a war, if you will, on blackness in many ways, that was a huge problem in America. And things were done. Steps were taken to correct that, particularly the Civil Rights Act, particularly that which was pushed by Republicans. Because remember, it was the Democrat Party that was not for the Civil Rights Act. And it is the Democrat Party that to this day wants to keep blacks and Hispanics and other ethnic minorities as less than capable of getting identification, less than capable of taking care of themselves. They need more handouts. They need more Section 8 housing. They need more Medicaid. They need more food and supplements. They need more of everything. Blacks are less than, according to the Democrat Party. They were before Civil Rights Act. They were at the Civil Rights Act passing, and they are now in the Civil Rights era. That is how they treat blacks. All right. But what they have done in an attempt now to, rather than elevate blacks, they want to take down and crush whiteness. It's a war on whiteness. And again, it begins with trying to teach little kids to be ashamed of their skin. There is no other way to say what the Smithsonian, and this was all exposed in some congressional hearings this week by the likes of Brandon Gill, who's becoming fast our favorite representative in the Congress, young 29 or 31 or whatever he is, year old Brandon Gill out of Texas, is just driving so much of the GOP narrative right now. And he's doing a phenomenal job. Nobody else is even coming close to being this important. And so I don't like this story. I don't like this topic. I don't like having to talk about this. I don't like having to, to be right about this. But discrimination is wrong in all its forms. If you're discriminating against any race, majority or minority, it is wrong because it literally forces people into circumstances based upon immutable characteristics that they cannot change. They cannot change. And if you force people into circumstances, making them marginalized in any way, shape, or form because of their skin color, and in particular, if you're teaching kids to view themselves in any kind of a way, it is wholly unacceptable. And that's what Congressman Brandon Gill did. And I want to hit a little bit of this before we get into Dr. Piper at the bottom of the hour. So I want to share this with you. Let me bring Congressman Brandon Gill to the stage, if you will. Exposing the true foolishness is how the New York Post called this, of the Smithsonian and America's woke reckoning, with a hilarious question. Now, I'm going to challenge that just a little bit because they're looking at it as in this was laughable. That's how the New York Post writes this. I'm not going to dismiss this as foolishness. I'm going to elevate this as dangerousness. This is extraordinarily dangerous, the type of thinking that the Smithsonian and the Democrat Party engages in when they marginalize white people and when they basically teach that being white and being polite, being responsible, being self-accountable is some sort of a white trait that others don't have, and that it's a symptom of white supremacy. Whiteness equals white supremacy in the eyes of those that are teaching these lessons. And that's part of what Brandon Gill set out to expose when confronting the Smithsonian director at this congressional hearing on Tuesday. So let's watch and listen to what Representative Gill said and what the response he got was.
Yes, sir.
It's also interesting because the same mass action toolkit that your organization has been promoting references.
I think we missed the beginning of that. I apologize. I'm going to go back to the very beginning because that first question is the question. Here we go.
Yes,
Is it important to be polite?
Excuse me, sir?
Is it important to be polite?
Yes, sir.
It's also interesting because the same mass action toolkit that your organization has been promoting references politeness as a defining characteristic of white supremacy culture. Ma'am, are you a white supremacist?
No, sir.
You're not. Can you help me square why your organization says that being polite is part of being a white supremacist?
I'm not exactly familiar with that passage of the Mass Action Toolkit, which is
I can show you the
one that we
passage. It's right
developed.
here.
I don't, pardon me?
I said I just read you the passage from it.
And then your question was, sir?
We're going to move on.
The question was, you're white, and if you believe politeness is important, which he asked you, does that make you a white supremacist? Because the toolkit that you and the others at the Smithsonian use, this 2020 toolkit, says that being polite means white supremacy. It's a part of white supremacist culture. That's what this means. Let me share this one with you. This is from Business Insider, and this is an article that I dug up from 2020. All right. This is July 18th, almost to the day, by the way, 6 years ago, 2020. The National Museum of African American History apologizes for a chart listing attributes of whiteness after criticism from Donald Trump Jr. and conservative media, of course. The chart was in the whiteness section of the museum's Talking About Race online portal, and it listed objective, rational, linear thinking, and hard work, and respecting authority as attributes of white dominant culture or whiteness. Another trait listed in the chart was being in a nuclear family where the husband is the breadwinner and the wife is a homemaker. the national media, this is from Byron York, as you can see. I'm gonna bring this whole thing up. Let me share it this way. All right, hopefully you can see that. I'm going to zoom that up a little bit for you so you can see it a little bit better, a little bit bigger perhaps. Well, it doesn't get much bigger than that. All right, and that's okay. But this is part of the toolkit that was being discussed. The National Museum of African American History and Culture wants to make you aware of certain signs of whiteness, including individualism, working hard, objectivity, being in the nuclear family, progress, respect for authority, delayed gratification, and more. These are things that, according to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which is a part of the Smithsonian, these are things that they say are prime examples and evidence of white culture and whiteness. Let me go back to this. Maybe I can make this one a little bit bigger on this screen. Does that help a little bit? Yeah, I think it does. Okay. So I want to just kind of run some, and here's a more direct image here. This was just kind of bullet pointed on a tweet, which I think is pretty good. Smithsonian's white supremacy checklist: individualism and self-reliance, nuclear family structures, rational linear thinking, work before you play, plan for your future, protect property, avoid conflicts, manage time. And this is where Brandon Gill held the Smithsonian director's feet to the fire there, being polite. Why is this so insulting? And not just to white people, but why is this so insulting to Black people? Because it absolutely most certainly is. Suggesting that being polite makes you a white supremacist would encourage people who are white to what? Be not polite. Because I don't want to be thought of as a white supremacist. I better treat people poorly. I better, cuss in public and start brawls in multiple public squares and, stage takeovers and all of these other things that we see all of the time. Because if we don't do those things, if we're polite, we're going to be thought of as being supremacist, that we think we're better than other people because we're being polite. And engaging in some of the other things that are on that list, like hard work and so forth. It's insulting to white people, and it's insulting to Black people and Hispanics or other ethnic and racial minorities. How can it not be? Because if it's a white virtue and a white supremacist culture item to be a hard worker, they're saying by definition that non-whites are not hard workers, that Blacks, Hispanics, and so on and so forth don't work hard. They're not polite. They're not all of those other things that we talk about. They're not objective. They're not rational thinkers, and so forth. It's insulting to every race. But the intent of the Smithsonian and our historians and those who are teaching our kids, the intent is to insult white people. It's part of the war on whiteness. But I'm here to point out that it does indeed insult white people, this white culture that the Smithsonian and our nation's historians and the keepers of our culture, it is insulting to us. It's also dangerous to call us white supremacists if we engage in or are reflected by some of these attributes, the individualism, the objectivity, the hard work, the politeness, and so on and so forth. It is insulting to suggest that. It's dangerous to suggest that we might be supremacists over it. But again, they're not intentionally doing it, but this is how ungodly stupid these people are. It is also extraordinarily insulting to the minorities that they propose to be representing and protecting, because it's suggesting that they're not those things. If I was a Black person, just like it's just like the SAVE Act, the Save America Act, which Democrats, including and especially Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, says it's just like Jim Crow 2.0, because you're going to deny Black people the right to vote if you make them get IDs. Don't you know that Black people can't get IDs? That's hard to do. It's really, really hard. Black and Hispanic people, way, way fewer of them are going to be able to get IDs than white people. That's calling them less than capable. It's an insult, especially when you point out something. And tomorrow I'm going to have Dr. John Lott on, or I'm going to actually share with you an interview that I did with Dr. Lott earlier this week. But Dr. John Lott brought some really, really important information to light. And here's a little spoiler alert. And I'm getting a tiny bit off on the tangent here away from the Smithsonian, but it's okay. It's kind of related. But Dr. Lott pointed out, you know how many countries there are on the continent of Africa? The answer is 54. And you know what all of the Africans on Africa have in common? They're all African. And Africans apparently have no problem getting identification, photo identification, because all 54 countries on the continent require government-issued identification to cast votes. And nobody there says, well, how are we going to do that? They're Africans. 51 of the 54 countries not only require government-issued identification to vote, but they also require proof of citizenship of said African country before they can register to vote. In other words, identical to what's in the SAVE Act. But in Africa, Africans are not thought of as incapable. But when they come to America, when they're African Americans, as opposed to Africans, suddenly Democrats tell them they can't do what they could do back in Africa, which is get identification. It's the biggest insult you can imagine. And by the way, it extends to Hispanics too. In Mexico and in South American countries, almost all of those on South America, same story, have to have photo identification to vote. It's the same way in most of the industrialized world. You have to show proof of who you are before you can vote. And you're not, nobody is given a pass from that because they happen to be of a certain color or ethnicity. But that's the insulting nature of what they're doing. And now back to the point here and what you see on your screen. And I want to just hit this for a moment or two before we bring in Dr. Piper. And I'm going to ask him to talk about this too. But this is part of the toolkit. This is, again, from Business Insider from 6 years ago, 2020, the toolkit that the Smithsonian uses in putting together their displays and, again, their education and their activism when it comes to race in America. These are aspects and assumptions of white culture in the United States. White dominant culture, or whiteness, refers to, and I'm going to zoom this, I don't know if I can zoom that up anymore. I think this is as zoomy as it gets. Refers to the ways in which white people and their traditions, attitudes, and ways of life have been normalized over time and are now considered standard practices in the United States. And since white people still hold most of the institutional power in America, we have all internalized some aspects of white culture, including people of color. And this is a problem for the Smithsonian. It's why Brandon Gill did what he did to the director. Rugged individualism. The individual is the primary unit, self-reliance. In other words, not relying on other people to get what you want. They're saying that's an attribute of whiteness. And they're using it as a slur. It's a negative. Independence and autonomy, rewarded. Individuals assumed to be in control of their environment. You get what you deserve. That's a problem for the Smithsonian and for those who are engaging in anti-whiteness and anti-white, or the war on whiteness, if you will. It's part of being white to be in a nuclear family, to have a father and a mother and children living together. Well, that's, if you engage in these kinds of things, by the way, that is part of white supremacist culture. Because most, 70-some% of Black kids in the United States of America grow up without a father in their homes. So yeah, most do not engage in or believe in or live out the nuclear family existence. Emphasis on scientific method. Whiteness means thinking clearly and rationally and objectively with cause and effect relationships rather than subjectively with bias. And apparently that's a bad thing. History based on Northern European immigrants' experience in the United States, heavy focus on the British Empire. Well, that's where the colonials came from, yeah. The primacy of Western and Judeo-Christian tradition, which, by the way, with Judeo-Christian tradition is literally what this country was founded on and made it the greatest force for good in the history of human civilization. Protestant work ethic. Hard work is the key to success. That is a tool of whiteness. Do you see how insulting and slanderous this is for non-white people? You don't believe in hard work. You don't believe in work before you play. Can you see that part down there? Again, I don't know if you're watching on a phone, it might be hard to read. If you didn't meet your goals, you didn't work hard enough is an element of whiteness. And that is suggesting that people who are non-white, i.e. blacks and Hispanics, they don't work hard and they don't believe that you get what you work for. You get what the far left can hand out to you. That's what the suggestion is. And this is all part of supremacist culture. That's why, and again, I'll play it again. What Brandon Gill asked the director of the Smithsonian, very plainly, using the Smithsonian's own writings and teaching components about politeness. Watch.
What is Latina power?
Hold on. I don't know why that can't restart. I want to restart it.
What is Latino power?
Let me do this. All right. It's messing up on me. I apologize. I'm hitting the wrong buttons here, but I wanted to just give you that one more time. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do it. All right. I apologize. But what Brandon Gill, and I played this for you before, Brandon Gill said very directly, is it important to be polite? And the Smithsonian director said, yes, it is. And then he said, are you a white supremacist? And she said, what? What are you talking about? And the answer is, or his follow-up point was, well, according to the Smithsonian's own toolkit on race, being polite is part of white supremacist culture. So if you said it's important to be polite, it sounds like you might be a white supremacist. And of course, she dodged that and ducked that because how do you answer it? I'm not familiar with that part of our toolkit. Well, then you're the director and you're not familiar with what is actually being displayed and taught and pushed and promoted by the Smithsonian, which is largely considered America's historian, or historical database. You're not familiar with your own things. And of course she was familiar with it, but she had no answer for it. She didn't think she'd ever be called out on it. So again, it's an intentional insult to white people. You're a supremacist if you believe in this hard work stuff and all of this, you get what you earn stuff and your politeness and your nuclear family stuff. That's white supremacist culture. It's an insult to white people intentionally. It's an insult to non-whites accidentally because it's making them describing them, portraying them as being less than hard workers, less than believers in their own, autonomy and their own success or struggles in life being their own responsibility and so forth. It's insulting to them, just like it is to say they can't get identifications, etc. So I've got a lot more on this. I'm going to pick it up again after the top of the hour, but I want to bring in Dr. Everett Piper for his regular Thursday visit. Well, not regular. It's a little irregular today because it's a little bit early. Normally we talk to Dr. Piper in the 8 o'clock hour, but schedules being what they are, sometimes we had to adjust. And Dr. Piper, welcome back. How are you, sir?
Hey, Bob. Hope you're doing well.
I am indeed. Thank you. So normally, and we will, in the second part of our chat, we'll talk about what you wrote about for the Washington Times. Dr. Piper is a weekly Washington Times columnist, obviously, as well as a former university president and a best-selling author and many other things. We'll get into what you wrote this week, Dr. Piper, but I cannot, of course, let this primary topic that we saw play out in a congressional hearing earlier this week, without getting your commentary on it. The Smithsonian portrays whiteness as being supremacist culture. And Brandon Gill, among others, called them out on it this week. Your thoughts?
Well, I listened to the last 5 minutes or so of your commentary, and I immediately think of what's going on in Oklahoma right now, as I've done before on your show. And I do think what happens in Oklahoma doesn't stay in Oklahoma. The old commercial, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. No, that was never true. And what happens in Oklahoma doesn't stay in Oklahoma. I often have said on your show and in some of my writing that the reddest of red states, if you watch what's going on politically, it could be a harbinger of things to come, the canary in the coal mine, if you will. We talked about the gubernatorial candidate here. which is Gentner Drummond, and how he's really a Democrat. He's not a Republican, but yet he's leading in the polls, or at least neck and neck in the polls, for the runoff for the gubernatorial nomination for the Republican Party. This is a man who has stood against religious freedom. This is a man who has done a variety of different things that are contrary to conservative principles and MAGA and the GOP party. It's why President Trump is endorsing Mike Mazzei, his opponent. So what's that have to do with your commentary? Well, there's another guy running right now in a runoff in Oklahoma for the superintendent of public instruction. In many states, it would be called the Secretary of Education, Superintendent of Education. It's the top education position in the state of Oklahoma. There are two candidates that entered into the runoff on the GOP side. One is Dr. James Taylor, who is a Black man, a Christian, an honorable man, and he has spent multiple years in the classroom, I believe teaching history. He is one of the two candidates. The other one is Robert Franklin. Robert Franklin has been a Democrat his entire life, as best we can tell. He switched over to the Republican Party to run for this position. And he just this week answered a question on his beliefs regarding diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, and said that he thought it was biblical and it should be applied in our public schools. So he is taking a position, Robert Franklin, in favor of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, critical theory, CRT, all of the alphabet soup nonsense that is prevalent in our culture right now, because in addition to DEI, he also is holding up a copy of the book, Separation of Church and Hate by John Fugelsang. Separation of Church and Hate. This is a book that challenges the orthodoxy of the Christian faith and suggests that fundamentalists, and you would be a fundamentalist, Bob, and I would be a fundamentalist, but because we believe in biblical truths, we believe in the Judeo-Christian ethic, we believe in all of the things that the Smithsonian is speaking against right now, in addition to being Christian and being people of faith, biblical faith, orthodoxy. Separation of church and hate would call you a fundamentalist and call you a white supremacist for doing so. So in the state of Oklahoma, we have a guy running for the Republican nomination for the Secretary of Education who is promoting that book, which is an LGBTQ advocacy book, as well as a book that elevates diversity, equity, and inclusion as a biblical concept. Now, get this one. In their debates thus far, guess what? The Black guy, the conservative, honorable, honest, hardworking Black guy is being called a white supremacist. And the fake Republican, literally a fake Republican, because just yesterday he was a Democrat who was posting stuff on X that was critical of Clarence Thomas and other conservatives for their positions and their beliefs. But guess what, Bob? The crazy guy, the guy that is promoting separation of church and hate, the guy who is promoting LGBTQIA and DEI, is the strong favorite to win. And then we'll have a choice in November of voting for a Democrat for Secretary of Education or another Democrat for the Secretary of Education, because he's just lying about being a Republican. We have to pay attention to your commentary and what's being said right now, because this is stuff that's going on in the heartland, in the Bible Belt, in Oklahoma. This isn't Washington, D.C. or San Francisco nonsense, just nonsense there. It's nonsense here. And barring God's grace and some miraculous performance and outcome for James Taylor, the guy who should get the job, the Bible-believing, conservative, self-made man who's in the classroom teaching right now as I speak, who believes in independence and responsibility and the nuclear family and biblical morality, and applying that to our daily lives to solve our problems. He believes in teaching kids to read and write and count. He believes in teaching science, that men and women are real. He believes in teaching American civics, that America is predominantly good and not evil. He believes in those things and wants that to be in the curriculum for Oklahoma so that we can stop being 49th or 50th in the nation on our student performance scores. But instead, the guy that's winning right now is the guy whose advocates are calling the black guy a white supremacist for believing all those things. And this guy is extolling the virtues of DEI. It's nuts. It's
It is.
crazy. It's
It
upside
is.
down.
And it's not the first time we've heard that. Of course, Larry Elder, my former colleague on radio, who is just an amazing, amazing man. He was once famously called the black face of white supremacy. And it sounds like now he's got a colleague there in Oklahoma. And it's, again, the idea, the notion, the suggestion, Dr. Piper, is so insulting that to have a belief in these kinds of things and the family things and so on and so forth means you are, selling out your blackness, and you are engaging in whiteness or white supremacy culture, white supremacist culture, whatever you want to call it. It is just so insulting, as if black people can't or shouldn't have the same attitudes, the same work ethic, the same things that lead to what? The achievement of the American dream. Opportunity exists for all people in this country. It's what we've spent 250 years building, a place of equality of opportunity, not equity or sameness of outcomes. And everybody has the same opportunity, but the people on the left side of the political spectrum, the scale, whatever you want to call it, want black people to feel as though everything is tilted against you. It is just simply not fair, because in order to achieve the same level of success that a lot of people in middle class white America or upper middle class or wealthy white America, in order to be able to achieve some of the things you're going to have to go against your own culture. You're going to have to go against what your own instincts tell you to do, and ways to live your life, and ways to enact black culture or to carry out black culture. You're going to have to be more like white people to do it, and that is just insane. You can keep your own culture, your racist culture, your ethnic histories culture, but yeah, you do have to work for things, and that's not whiteness. That's Americanism. That is what it means to be in the greatest country in the world, where opportunity exists for all. You just have to do some things. And for them to say, yeah, but to do it, you have to be like white people. I think it's almost like daring minorities, racial and ethnic minorities. I don't want to focus just on black, but that racial and ethnic minorities, it's almost like daring them, no, be different than white people, even if it costs you, even if it means you can't have all of the same things that they're able to achieve. You just wait, and it's kind of like being tethered to or chained to the ideological plantation that the Democrat Party continues to engage in, to try to teach black people, no, you got to stay over here with us. Don't worry about it. Whatever your needs are, we'll meet them. We'll house you. We'll feed you. We'll give you medical care, and so on and so forth. And you don't have to work real hard like all of those white people over there do. That's the message, Dr. Piper, and it's beyond insulting.
It is the message, and I would suggest it goes even a little deeper. This goes into the conflict between a constitutional republic worldview, a biblical worldview, a Judeo-Christian worldview, and that of the Marxist worldview. So this is a conflict between what the United States of America was founded as, a constitutional republic, which is grounded in the British model, okay, the legal system of Blackstone and others. The Magna Carta sets the context for the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And this is all grounded in a biblical worldview, not forcing people to be Christian, but acknowledging that the foundation for American society and American culture, the American constitutional republic, is Christian. That's irrefutable. Go back. You've done it. I've done it. Go back and listen to what the founding fathers said. So you have that worldview in conflict with a neo-Marxist worldview, which is advocated by Marcuse and W.E.B. Du Bois. And that in fact, there's a black scholar here in Oklahoma by the name of Eddie Huff, who has argued that the tipping point for black culture in America was the decision that blacks had to make between following the teaching and the ideology of Du Bois or Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington believed in personal responsibility. He believed in self-sufficiency. In fact, he argued that the government should stop insulting blacks and leave them alone, let them have the same opportunities as anybody else in culture, and show them due respect accordingly. That was Booker T. Washington. And then Du Bois comes along and argues for a Marxist worldview. At the time, it was the economic conflict between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. The communists recognizing, the Marxists recognizing that their economic model wasn't proving itself out in the market square because capitalistic countries, market-driven countries, were actually seeing their people rise out of poverty much more effectively than communist countries. They shifted the debate, still Marxist, but they shifted the debate from the economic conflict to intersectionality, to the racial conflict, to the identity conflicts that we're having to wrestle with today. And there we have it. We've got diversity, equity, inclusion. We've got critical theory. And maybe the take home for your commentary is for everybody to remember what the Black Lives Matter Charter actually says. It calls for the dismantling, quote, the queering of the nuclear family, because it's a negative thing for Blacks to have a mom and a dad married to one another and raising their own children. That's a negative thing. It needs to be dismantled. It needs to be queered. And that indeed is the agenda of BLM. And that's what you're seeing in the Smithsonian stuff that you've covered already in your show.
That's a great reminder. That is exactly how they started. And I remember that reading Patrice Cullors, or however you say her last name or whatever, and her partner literally said, we are trained Marxists and we begin with the theory of, and it talks about literally dismantling that nuclear family. So you're spot on, Dr. Piper. And it is remarkable to me that these people, and again, if people have been like looking at the Smithsonian, by the way, isn't just a museum. It is a massive, massive, infrastructure. And it is largely considered to be, the historical record or the teaching record of America. For so many of America's kids. And if you look at all of the different things they have, in addition to this particular stuff, they literally talk about, I saw a graphic illustration on a wall where it said girl power, something like that. It's complicated. And it showed like this morphing of a kind of a silhouette figure of a boy and a girl. Basically, it's complicated. In other words, promoting the notion that there are no such things as girls. There are just whatever you want to be and whatever you want to call yourself. Girlhood is complicated so that boys can be girls too. So all of this stuff is, again, almost a historical record, if you will, that teaches America's kids. And one of the things they're teaching our kids is young Black kids to not be like white people. And white people, if you are like yourself, you're a white supremacist. And it's extraordinarily destructive.
Do you remember when Bryant Gumbel was still a commentator in sports, or
yeah,
it wasn't just sports? Yeah, I think he was on one of the Sunday.
Well, he hosted the Today Show for years. He was like, yeah.
I was the dean of students at Greenville College in Southern Illinois at the time. I was about an hour away from St. Louis, East St. Louis, in that metropolitan area. I remember very specifically at that time that Bryant Gumbel was being criticized for being white because he was articulate, he enunciated properly, his vocabulary was rich, and therefore he wasn't really Black. So this has been going on for decades. It started out with that sort of quote unquote minor criticism of Bryant Gumbel and Blacks that assimilated into white culture by speaking properly. And I will say it that way, speaking properly. Okay, that's not a white issue. Proper grammar should not just be a white virtue. It should be an American virtue. It should be something we teach in our schools. Pronounce your words correctly, learn how to write, learn how to read, learn how to speak, and do it with the King's English, if you will.
You nailed it. Look at the graphic, Dr. Piper, because as soon as you started on this trail, I remember from what I read in the graphic here before the show. There it is. It's in the lower right side there, if people can see that, and I hope you can. This is, again, all part of whiteness, communication, the King's English rules, written tradition, etc. And that's where you'll find be polite. Don't discuss personal life, don't show emotion. That's a little bit bizarre. I think white people are just as emotional as anybody else. But to your point about don't speak properly or else you sound white. What you just described about what they did to Bryant Gumbel still happens today. That's why they have dumbed down so many things in. I used to be an English teacher. Grammar and the mechanics of language and things like that. Black people aren't expected to be able to master or even replicate in examinations and so forth, because it is a part of whiteness and white culture, and they shouldn't be expected to learn that, even if it is the way in which we communicate in this country with English, and presentation and articulation literally matter. Job interviews, if you can't speak properly, and they'll say, you mean like a white person? But if you can't speak with proper English and grammar and so forth, if you can't write basic things in that way, that's why it used to be called, Dr. Piper, and it was, what did they call it? The Ebonics.
Ebonics, yeah.
Ebony phonics, Ebonics. We have to accept Ebonics, which is more like Black culture. And it's not necessarily wrong because it doesn't follow the grammatical rules of the quote unquote King's English. And so we had to accept that. And it's just gotten worse. And that was like back in the 80s, 90s, that kind of term came about. And now it's considered to be a little bit of a slur to say if you're talking Black, you're talking with Ebonics, they don't want it to be like that. We're talking like who we are in our own Black culture. And I'm sitting here just thinking, you know what? Love your culture, be proud of your culture, but understand that when you get into the world and you want to take advantage of the opportunities that this country provides you, you're going to have to communicate in ways that other people understand more than just those in quote unquote Black culture. And the settled manner is the language of English. And the English rules have to be applied and they have to be followed in order for you to communicate effectively. And if you don't communicate effectively, sadly, it is going to have a deleterious impact on your prospects of success and achieving the American dream.
And that would be true whether you're Black, white, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. If you're not using proper grammar, it's going to be a negative in your professional advancement. And it should be.
It should be, yes.
Because you need to take the time to learn how to communicate effectively. I've told you before on your show, I grew up in a blue-collar family with neither a mom or dad who had a high school diploma. Now, if my memory is that my mother and father still communicated very clearly and they used proper grammar. But I stop and I think of some of the uniquenesses of the Piper communication style, the mispronunciation of given words and whatnot. I don't continue to do that. I try to correct that. And if I slip back into it periodically, I'm a little embarrassed. Not because I'm embarrassed of my mom and dad or my family. It's just because I should learn, I should improve, I should become better, and I shouldn't continue to do the same thing and use the same type of slang, at least not in a professional setting like this. Now, if I'm talking to my mom and dad and I want to slip back into some slang periodically that's unique to our rural community, then fine. No big deal, but I'm not going to elevate it as being over and above and better than proper grammar and the King's English. Period. End of it. And that's not a racist thing to say. That's not a pejorative thing to say against my quote unquote blue collar family upbringing. I'm proud of my blue collar family heritage. I'm proud of that. And there's another thing, and I know we need to move on, but there's always a good element. There's always a good dose of truth in any effective lie. And here's what they'll say. Well, are you suggesting that somebody with a Southern accent, somebody from Georgia or somebody from Mississippi, because they have that accent, that they're less intelligent than you, or that their English is less proper than yours? No. This is a very different discussion than an accent. Somebody who has an Ohio accent, or in my case, a Michigan accent, if you move down here in Oklahoma, they recognize it. I don't know I'm using my accent, but they do. Even though I've been here for 25 years, they still recognize I ain't one of them because I still have a Yankee accent. I do not think that the Oklahoma accent is any less the King's English than Bob's accent from Ohio. An accent is a very different thing than improper grammar and just speaking poorly and using the wrong words because they don't fit into the sentence because you don't even understand the definition of what you're saying. That's a different thing than an accent.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, it's funny. I was going to bring this up because did you or do you ever watch The Simpsons? It's been on the air for 30 years.
Used to, well, periodically, but not routinely.
I used to a ton. I think the first 12, 13 seasons, I was like, oh my gosh. And then I don't know if I grew out of it. They changed it a lot. And once they started, by the way, doing, political correctness, and we can't have this character anymore. We can't have that character anymore because it's making fun of Apu, the 7-Eleven manager or the Quickie Mart manager, whatever. It's, stereotype of Indians and all down the line. So they went all woke, and that's one of the reasons. But Here's the funny part about this. They had a character on The Simpsons called Cletus, the slack-jawed yokel. Cletus was the stereotypical redneck or hillbilly, white tank top, wife beater wearing, literal slack-jawed, living in a shack with 17 kids and whatever, who talk like this, one of those guys, a complete mock-up of a traditional uneducated white person who can't speak properly. And that was his character's role. And it was completely mocking, like I said, white rural people, in particular white rural Southern people. Okay, there was never a character on The Simpsons of a stereotypical black inner city individual who speaks improperly, and so on and so forth, because that would never be allowed. It would never be allowed. This guy is unique, this Cletus character, because he doesn't speak like normal people. He's the typical dumb. It goes to the point you were saying, Dr. Piper, about if you can't speak proper English, it doesn't matter what color you are going to be mocked. You are going to be, or at the bare minimum, not taken seriously, especially if you are applying for something or trying to achieve an objective if you can't speak properly. But it's okay to mock whites who can't speak properly, who speak redneck or hillbilly or whatever, or with that twang or whatever it is that they want to mock or whatever. But in popular culture, for example, you cannot say that about any other ethnicity. You can only do that, honestly, to white people, but black people will never be treated that way. So again, the notion that proper grammar is a tool of whiteness and white supremacy, it's, like I said, it's insulting intentionally to white people, but almost accidentally to black people. Any other thoughts, Dr. Piper? I know you're on a clock here, so you've got to go. So you've got an obligation there, but we'll have to. It looks like your camera froze for a second. I thought you were just done talking. I think you froze.
No,
Okay.
you froze on my end. I think. Can you hear me now? Are you okay?
I hear you now. You're good. You're good. But go ahead and give your final thoughts on this.
I
We're
would
not going to
just-
be able to talk about your article yet. But.
That's okay. I would just say this, and I'm fine. I don't need to run immediately, but I would say this. For me, as a Bible believing Christian, the Bible is the solution to all of this nonsense. The diversity, equity, and inclusion discussion, this Smithsonian presentation that you've already critiqued and reviewed, the critical theory ideology, all of this stuff is self-focused. Me, 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 me. I want mine. I've said before on your show, it essentially is a breach of one of the 10 commandments. Thou shalt not covet. What it teaches everybody to do is want and desire and be envious of other people's stuff, other people's position, and other people in general. You want to supplant what they are so that you can get more of what they have been enjoying. Rather than the Protestant work ethic, if you will, the traditional pull yourself up by your bootstraps model of the United States of America, which says we don't believe in equity, we believe in equality of opportunity. And that equality of opportunity, like Booker T. Washington preached, is something that will allow all boats to rise with the tide. If you take advantage of the opportunities that are given to you, it doesn't make a difference whether your boat is black or your boat is white or your boat is Hispanic or your boat is fill in the blank. All boats will rise with the tide of opportunity if you do your job and avail yourself of it. There's nothing racist about it. In fact, it's the opposite of racism, because it says, I think that a blue collar, other side of the tracks kid from Hillsdale, Michigan can make it if he is just given the same equal opportunity as anybody else. Perhaps others that have a higher socioeconomic class than he does. I took advantage of that, and the Lord has blessed accordingly. So I think the biblical worldview is the answer to all of these problems. And in fact, the Apostle Paul says, in the body of Christ, you are neither Jew nor Greek, barbarian or Scythian, male or female. If that isn't a statement of equality, of color blindness within the body of Christ, within Christendom, I don't know what is. The Apostle Paul is saying it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter who you are, and stop talking about who you are. Stop focusing on self and start focusing on being in the body of Christ, because it's a colorblind, a racially blind, it's even a gender blind society of believers that come together in equality at the foot of the cross. That's the solution to this, rather than this satanic worldview of neo-Marxism.
Yeah, very, very well said. And, and the sad reality is I've heard far too many people on the political left, and particularly in the DEI culture and so forth, who have said pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, which you just described, is a white culture and white supremacist mindset. And so it's the reality. You pull yourself up, you make of yourself what you want in an equal opportunity society, and they'll just continue to respond. It's not an equal society because of historical inequality. Present day equality doesn't atone for historical inequality. It's still harder for us than it is for you, and therefore don't tell us that we can pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. It's one excuse after another, and it is, I think, the primary driver of the differences, I think, success-wise, economic and class status and so on and so forth in the country. Dr. Piper, we'll let you run there. Next time, we'll talk more about Candace asking questions. She's got to stop. I agree. But thanks very much, Dr. Piper. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. You take care, Bob.
You got it. There's Dr. Everett Piper. He has an obligation. Normally, he'd be on right now, coming on at 8 o'clock, but he has a 8 to 9:30 thing, or 7 to 8:30 thing in the central time zone where he is. So he had to come on a little bit earlier today. But I'm so glad we're able to continue the narrative and the conversation we were having. And just, one of the things Dr. Piper said a moment ago that struck me, he used the word mine, and he said something about I have to get mine, or something like that, in making a description of this issue. And you know what I heard in my head? I heard mines. Because that's part of the Ebonics, quote unquote, Black culture that we talk about all the time. It's just something that was created by whom and when, I don't know, but you've heard probably either on television or on social media or whatever, videos or whatever. It's part of like Black lingo or Black slang to say mines. I got mines, not mine, but which is proper grammar, but mines. It's just an example. And you're like, okay, if you're just talking to your friends, your fellas, your homies, your whatever, like that, it's fine. But you do realize that when you get into a place of business, or a place where, especially if you are applying to get into a school or to get a job or something like that, you have to leave that lingo at the door, right? It's almost like casual swearing. If you curse and use profanity in your private life, it's not ideal. It's not something to be proud of. But, you may. I know, because I do. In my private life with friends or family or something like that, if I use some profanity in a given situation, either for humor, and it's usually for humor, or out of frustration and anger, and sometimes those words will come out in frustration and anger too. I know that's a bad quality, but I also know where its place is, and it's not language you would use in public. You drop that casual type of communication, you drop that at the door. If you're going in for a job interview, can you imagine sitting in front of a man's desk or a woman's desk, you're being interviewed, and you just drop an F-bomb casually in conversation? And you believe that? Yeah, I remember once I worked for this old effer, and it's nonsensical, right? It's crazy. You wouldn't do that. So it's the same thing. You want to be able to communicate in a way that is going to present your best self to somebody that you need to impress because of a quote unquote opportunity that lies in front of you. Ultimately, that's what this is about. Opportunity in America to be successful. And according to what we're being told by, again, the Smithsonian, and we'll go back, if you try to become successful by speaking properly, presenting properly, maybe following the success sequence. That's another topic, by the way, that I'm going to do a show on in the very near future. This new law that has been passed in the state of Ohio, and I believe signed by Mike DeWine, the success sequence that teaches young kids the proper order to do things. We talked about this very briefly when it passed and when it was signed, I think, but graduate high school comes first. Become gainfully employed, have a way of sustaining yourself comes second. Then, if you fall in love, then get married and create a stable environment to then have children. It's a four-step approach that is not going to be perfect every time for everybody. And it's not going to be possible every time for everybody. But it is the best case. No, let me rephrase. It gives you the best chance of being successful rather than putting those out of order, such as getting pregnant in high school and having a baby. Not married, don't have a job, don't have your degree or your diploma. Your opportunities to be successful for yourself and your child are less than if you did that in a reverse order. Getting married, getting a job, and so forth before starting a family is certainly preferable simply from just a statistical standpoint. It gives you a much better chance of being kept out of poverty and into the middle class or higher than if you do it another way. Well, we can apply that to the conversation we're having now about race and about whiteness. The radicals call this, let me pull up the graphic again so we can kind of continue this part of the chat. Where did it go? There it goes. The left would say that sequence is a part of white supremacy because it's teaching people that the way to be successful is to do it the way white successful people have done it, not recognizing that some people who are not white don't like that order of things. They might not want to get married ever, and they don't necessarily see the value in that high school diploma. And if they, they start having babies when they start having babies, that's nobody's business. And it is nobody's business but theirs. That and the baby that is possibly anyway, going to be consigned to a life of difficulty and a life of poverty because this is the cycle that is never broken. So I'm going to go back here to this. And again, I don't know how well you can see it compared to what I see on my screen. That's a little bit large. That didn't make the graphic any bigger for you. Maybe I can full screen it just for a moment or two. Let me try that, see if that helps it a little bit for you. Okay, maybe, somewhat, kind of, sort of. So I just wanted to hit a few more of the points here, and I'm going to pull this back down here. Okay. So these are all what this is a part of the toolkit that the Smithsonian uses to educate and teach about American history and about American culture. Protestant work ethic, I think, is where we left off when Dr. Piper. So we'll go into the second column here, the second page. Future orientation. It's whiteness. It's white culture, white dominant to plan for the future, to delay your gratification. In other words, not buying the car you cannot afford now before and having it repoed or having, going into extreme debt for it because you got to have that car now, or you've got to have this, $200 pair of LeBrons or Jordans or whatever right now before you can really afford it. Delayed gratification is a white thing. Don't be like that. Progress is always best. Tomorrow will be better. Optimism. What a terrible thing to have, right? That's a white culture thing. Time. Follow rigid time schedules. Time viewed as a commodity. Time is a commodity, and time schedules should be followed. Because if you can't be on time, you are therefore judged as what? If you cannot be on time, you are correctly judged as being unreliable. If I can't rely on you to be here at the start of the workday at 8 o'clock, you are going to be judged as unreliable. That's not racist to do so. It is what you have expressed. It's not a priority to you to be on time, and therefore we can't rely on you or count on you, and the chances are we're going to find somebody else to do that job. Aesthetics, based on European culture, steak and potatoes, bland is best. What, because we don't like hot sauce or something, or the extra spice? My wife puts extra spice on everything. She's as white as can be. She's of Polish descent. I don't like the stuff. She puts hot spices on just about everything. Maybe she's got some ethnic blood in her from somewhere else. I don't know. But these are just kind of stupid. Woman's beauty based on blonde and thin, or like Barbie. I don't think that has ever been the case for quote unquote whiteness, because brunettes and redheads and brown haired and so on and so forth, it doesn't matter. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And guess what? Spoiler alert, there are a lot of white men who think there are a lot of black, beautiful women in the world. And I'm one of them. You can't tell me when you look at certain black women, particularly the celebrities, but even not celebrities, beauty is beauty. And it isn't white, and it isn't Barbie style. And I guarantee it, we all know. I mean, the reverse is true as well. There are a lot of black males who look at, and I don't know why we're just doing, I guess because they did the Barbie thing, but let's flip it around too. I know there are a lot of white women who think that a lot of black men are much more attractive. It doesn't freaking matter. This is divisiveness for the sake of divisiveness. This is what the Smithsonian is doing here. Justice. Based on English common law, protect property and entitlements. It's white. See, this is, again, the intent here is to slander whiteness, and what they're doing is accidentally or unintentionally insulting blackness or ethnic minorities. If it's whiteness and white dominant culture and white supremacist to protect property and quote unquote entitlements, that means that property is up for grabs in black culture or in ethnic minority culture. Property, you don't own it, and I can take it from you. And if I want to take it from you, I will. How does that help black culture to stereotype it as being somehow in some way not a believer in private property? And the suggestion that it's white to think that you can keep something and not have to give it up or have it taken from you. Intent counts. Communication. We just covered this with Dr. Piper. Speaking properly. Written tradition. Avoiding conflict. Avoiding intimacy, which is, I don't know where that's coming from. Don't show emotion. This is very, very difficult. I'm looking at this. Don't show emotion and then be polite. This is going to be what I'm about to describe as a victim of doom scroll culture, I think. And this came out, by the way, in 2020, this toolkit that the Smithsonian is using, that Brandon Gill was questioning the director on. I have scrolled enough videos to see something develop in that culture called fatigue. Can we have a raw discussion of race right now? The online culture has identified a trend. And again, a lot of this is based on doom scrolling algorithms. When you're scrolling videos, the shorts, and I create them myself too, my own Bob France road rants. Most of the time, sometimes it's taken from the show, sometimes it's from my own road rant things. When you're scrolling these short videos and these commentaries, sometimes they're videos of things that are happening in the world. You know, somebody pulls out their camera when a fight is happening. Somebody pulls out their camera when this or that or other unusual thing that might be interesting, that might get them clicks and views. Well, one of the things that the algorithms will continue to feed you if you stop and watch one or two of them is public fights. The what are sometimes referred to as the teen takeovers. Public brawls in malls, in restaurants, oftentimes the same restaurants, the same types of restaurants, Golden Corral, Popeye's Chicken, a couple of the other ones. I can't remember them all, but you start to see a pattern emerge that people have started to refer to when you're watching these videos as fatigue. And the fatigue that people are using is black fatigue, because the overwhelming majority of the videos that we're talking about of brawls, gang beating of one individual, meaning not necessarily actual street gangs, but numerous people attacking one person. It's almost exclusively a white victim. And it's a group of African Americans beating, dragging, kicking, punching in a situation if they're not battling one another. Talking about, black on black mob violence. In fact, that it doesn't exist in the reverse. There are no videos out there in social media land of groups of white people beating an individual black person, where it's 5-on-1 or 9-on-1 or 10-on-1 or whatever. Because if there were, CNN would blast this as, look at this white supremacist, racist group beating on an innocent black person. This is what it's like to be black in America today. It would be, cities would burn, CNN would go 24/7. You understand that, right? But there are countless videos of black on white violence, black on black clashes. And people have come to call it black fatigue in the comments in so many of these things. I'm tired of seeing this, is what their message is. And I bring that up because of what I just shared with you again. Let me pull it back up one more time. What does it say at the bottom? Again, if you can read that, and I know it's harder for you than it is for me because I got it on a big screen in front of me. Avoiding conflict and don't show emotion. That's whiteness. Okay. So what are they saying? I will say that in those videos that I have become so accustomed to seeing, because again, they feed them to you. Once you've seen one or two of them, they continue to feed them to you. A whole lot of quick to anger black emotion. And this is what is leading to all of these brawls and all of these attacks and so on and so forth. And that what they're suggesting here at the Smithsonian is that it's part of white culture to keep that emotion in check and not do all of those types of things, not be so quick to violence, not be so quick to take offense at and therefore attack on the basis thereof, and so forth. They're saying that that's a tool of white dominance and white supremacy. And what I would like to say is, it's not supremacy and it's not dominance. It's not wanting to be violent, not wanting to be overly emotional and to instantly take offense at and start screaming. Now, we've all seen white awfuls. What do we call them? Angry white female leftists. Awfuls. I've seen plenty of white Karens losing their minds, screaming on these same types of videos, screaming during traffic stops or shoplifting things. If you see a lot of the cop videos and these kind of things, I've seen plenty of them. But there are plenty more, even though they're a smaller part of the population, of those incidents involving black women. And so the idea that to be in control of your emotion and to avoid conflict is a tool of whiteness is simply not true. But statistically, if the message here is, and this is borne out in statistics, if the message is don't be like the white people, if they are calmer and less, quick to violence and quick to losing it on somebody or whatever, or engaging in mob-style 10-on-1 beatings, don't be like white people. It means to do those things, to be like a non-white person. Don't be white dominant. Don't be white supremacist. Be like our culture, which is feeding that narrative. And statistically, it bears it out, the number of violent crimes committed and so on and so forth. So, as I said at the very beginning of the conversation and of the topic, and it's a difficult one anytime you're talking about race, especially in 2026, where the president is called a racist. His law enforcement officers are called racists and fascists and Gestapo and so on and so forth. It's always hard to have these conversations. But it's never going to change if those who are educating our children continue to feed the narrative that whiteness is something you want to avoid. Don't be like white supremacists and have a nuclear family, speak properly, work hard, get your diploma, wait until you're married to have kids, and all of the other things we talk about. Don't be like that. Tells young minority kids to be the opposite of that and to continue to perpetuate and feed the cycle of broken homes, poverty, drug addiction, and prison pipeline. Maybe, just maybe, goodness, work ethics, proper grammar should not be broken down by race. Maybe we just say all persons should strive for those things. It's not white culture, and it's certainly not white supremacy. It may appear that way because if more white people are achieving success from following those simple basic rules and patterns of life, if they are becoming more successful, it may look like, well, it's white supremacy because they end up in a supreme position, in many cases. But it's not about the color. It is about the behavior, and it is about the following of those simple precepts. Work hard. Pull yourself up by the proverbial bootstraps. Delay your gratification. Don't overspend when you're younger. And these are just simple success tools that everybody can follow. They're not white. And Black people are not buying into white supremacist culture if they follow those rules. Calling somebody like Bryant Gumbel, as Dr. Piper said, or somebody like Ben Carson, or somebody like Clarence Thomas, or something. There's so many highly successful Black people who have followed those kinds of tools and kinds of norms and been enormously successful. They didn't do it because they followed white culture. They did it by following success culture. And it's available to whites and Blacks. Democrats don't want Blacks to believe they can do that. And they want to demonize white people for daring to be successful. This is another example of kind of what we deal with as a culture. This is DJ Jasmine Crockett, at the hearing, the Smithsonian hearing that they had on Capitol Hill. Can I pull this up here? Yeah, the judiciary, and they're talking about, in this particular case, they were talking about deportations. But this is what we're talking about from those on the radical far left. And these are the race baiters on the left that try to make sure everything is about race.
We're back again for another edition of the Republican Party's Great Replacement Theory Therapy Session, where all the white men of the House Judiciary Committee lecture Americans on the importance of mass deportations so that they preserve their so-called American values.
Do we need to say anything more? That was her opening statement. Here we are for our white people's great replacement therapy session, in which white people complain. When everything that you see is in color, and I don't mean as opposed to black and white. I mean, if all you see is race and color in everything you do, you're going to be a miserable, horrific shell of a human being. And the case in point is on your screen in front of you. That's Jasmine Crockett. She has to be the most miserable, contemptible son of a you-know-what that I've seen in government. Everything she does and everything she sees is rooted in race and color. And the last part of what she said.
We're back again for another edition of the Republican Party's Great Replacement Theory Therapy Session, where all the white men of the House Judiciary Committee lecture Americans on the importance of mass deportations so that they preserve their so-called American values.
There it is again. American values. American values are white values, is what she is saying. Because we don't want to be overrun by illegal aliens, migrants from all over the world who don't want to come here and assimilate, but want to come here and instead segregate and balkanize the United States of America. Because we don't want that. That makes us racist. When I say that the most miserable people see color in everything, let me tell you what I mean by that. Watch this. This is DJ Jazzy at a different hearing. And I think this was for Monday, the day after the World Cup final, which, as we talked about, I had paid no attention to whatsoever. But according to Jasmine Crockett, the people who rooted for Spain in the World Cup are racists. When all you see is race, this is what you get. So let me go ahead and play this.
The World Cup that captured the imaginations of the entire world when they saw all of these people of color that was playing for all these teams. And ultimately, if you recall, the last two teams, it was Argentina and Spain. And it seemed like the vast majority of the world was rooting for Argentina, or actually against Argentina, right? And why was that? Just give me an explanation if you could guess, if you'll just let them finish the answer.
Spain had the best team. Maybe that's why they were rooting for them.
There's also a racist history that exists.
Mr. Byer, you're recognized.
Thank you.
I sometimes you run out of words, and that's kind of where I am with people like Jasmine Crockett right now. I'm just running out of words. I mean, seriously. First of all, in her ridiculous attempt at making a racial talking point, he didn't realize which side rooting against would have been racist. Most of the people in the world were rooting for Argentina because it's racist. I mean, they were rooting against Argentina because it's racist. Anyway, rooting against one or the other is because of racism. She actually said that, and she has been routinely over the course of the last 4 days mocked mercilessly to within an inch of her online life, as she should be. But I want to use it as more than just that. I want to use it as an evidence of what we're talking about here. White culture is not unique to whites, and it is not exclusively for whites. If it is a success culture, and the United States is predominantly a white country, just demographically speaking, and the United States is a successful culture. If you marry those things together, whiteness and success, maybe it's not the whiteness that is making people successful. Maybe it is the decision making. And if the decision making is to follow that success sequence that we talk about, it can be followed by everybody. It can be followed by Blacks, Hispanics, Asians. And it's funny, we never talk about the Asian minority population. When we talk about ethnic minorities and racial minorities in the United States, we talk about Black and Hispanic all of the time. We never talk about Asians. Asians are just as much of a minority. There are fewer of them, in fact, in the United States than there are Black and Latino. Well, I don't know what that number is. I'd have to look that up to see specifically. But do you know that per capita, Asians are far, far, far more successful than white people? How is it that one minority group has managed to exceed the level of the majority group? If the country is so systemically racist and keeping minority groups down, why has one minority group elevated past the majority group, while most of the other minority groups sit below and say it's because of racism? And might it be because most in the Asian communities follow those steps, the success sequence things, the things that the Smithsonian and the radical left call white culture? Maybe they're not so white. Maybe they're just success culture, because you could say so much of what you see on this chart and from their toolkit about Asian Americans and Asians, period, as well, where the nuclear family matters, where the individual is the primary unit, where proper grammar, not English, mind you, but proper grammar, if they're speaking of, an Asian language, a foreign language, they're speaking it properly and learning that which they need to learn in the United States, which is English. So many people from third world countries who are Spanish speakers have no interest whatsoever in speaking English, but they come over from Asian countries, and learn to speak English, and look at how successful they are. They're objective, they're rational thinkers, they work hard Hard work is emphasized in Asian culture unlike any other. We go to school 6-7 hours a day. They go to school 10-12 hours a day. We go to school 9 months a year. They go to school pretty much 11 months a year. They work before they play. All of the things that were on this big white culture list here, Asians do. And yet Asians are not white. So how are they doing it? How are they so successful? How are they so successful? Because white culture isn't exclusive to whites. It's a success culture that many, not all, there are a lot of Cletus the slack-jawed yokels out there, but many white people, the majority, follow to be successful. And Asians follow even better and are more successful. Talking about per capita income, talking about advanced degrees, talking about all of the different metrics to measure the success of an ethnic population. So it's not white supremacy to be successful, to speak properly, to not want to engage in physical violence, to not want to lose your mind and go off on people, and all the things that we talk about. Everything that we have seen there. The overarching narrative of American society described by the Smithsonian and the National Museum of American History and Culture and so forth, teaching young Black kids to really, really resent and hate white people and white kids, and teaching white kids to be ashamed of their skin. Whiteness is not presented as a skin color, but a system of traditions and assumptions and behaviors that give them an advantage. White supremacy. I'm just looking through the list. Time consciousness, property and ownership, religion, justice, the American justice system, competition. People are encouraged in white culture to strive to be number one, which carries them a lot further than people who don't strive to be the best. And yet the Asians are number one, which means it's not white culture at all. Communications, aesthetics, holidays and public traditions. It's just on and on and on and on. White employees expected to examine what racial power they must surrender. This is the real troubling stuff. White people are assigned collective responsibility for the struggles of non-white people. For the ethnic minorities who are not Asians, who don't rise to achieve the American dream, it's the fault of white people. They have to accept responsibility for that. White employees should surrender some of the power that they have and the success that they have in order to give better opportunities to non-white people. In other words, DEI. The museums at the Smithsonian instructed to decenter whiteness. Whiteness is treated as an oppressive center of power that must be displaced, not simply one perspective among many. I mean, I'm just going through this, and you thought I was kidding again a few weeks ago when I wrote, because of the physical war on whites in the streets, for some of the things that we were talking about the, like the Cincinnati beatdown that we had a few months ago. Remember the white woman who was knocked unconscious and the white man who was in the middle of the street laying there in the fetal position as he was being pounded by a group of Black individuals? You know, we talked about this war on whiteness being a physical one, but it is so much more than that. There is an ideological war on whiteness in which whiteness is being painted as the enemy and the evil of the country, of the world, and it has to be displaced and it has to be replaced. And meanwhile, the people who follow all of those tenets of quote unquote white culture and white supremacy, like Asians do, are highly successful, and they're not white. That's really quite a remarkable thing. All right, I'm going to, by the way, we're going to be done a little early today. We're going to be cutting it at in about less than 10 minutes due to a schedule conflict that I have. But I do want to get to what some of the chatters have to say after I remind you about what some of our friends have to say, including our friend Mark King at Keeping Medicare Simple. I just had a great chat with Mark last night. He called me, and we were talking about some of the changes in Medicare this year, the changes that the companies make and that the Medicare policy drivers in Washington make are really, really astounding. And what they do is they put people at risk. People who are in a certain plan where coverage is happening for certain elements of their healthcare needs are no longer covered. Plans change all the time. And that's why I've got to continue to remind you to call Mark King. Seriously, just even for a phone consultation, if you don't even go in to see him in his office or meet him someplace for a cup of coffee, learn and find out, is the plan that you're in now going to still be available for you in the coming enrollment cycle, which is coming up in October? You're going to be in for a rude awakening if you don't check ahead of time. Call Mark at 440-832-8936. Find out if your Medicare coverage is going to remain intact. Find out if it's going to change. Find out if the costs are going up. Find out if the company you are with even still offers that one next time around. You've got to make sure. Call 440-832-8936. Visit the website, keepingmedicaresimple.com. I talk all the time about how Mark is such a great foundational supporter and sponsor of this show, and he is. But I'm talking to you now for you, not for me. I'm talking about your Medicare needs. And if you are going to turn 65 soon, you definitely want to make that phone call to Mark and make sure you get into the best possible plan for yourself, because they are a-changing. 440-832-8936. Mark is MAGA. Mark is looking out for your interest, your needs, not those of the insurance companies and not his own, for your needs. Call Mark if you are on Medicare or going into Medicare. 440-832-8936. Also want to remind you once again, well, the way I did at the top of the show, you got 1 day to RSVP. You got to do it by Saturday. So tomorrow, the 24th, is the last day. By Saturday, because it's 1 week from Saturday on August 1st that we will be getting together for the Middleburg Heights GOP picnic. And I am so excited about this because I am co-hosting this event along with the Middleburg Heights GOP. And I want to give you some of the names again of some of the folks who are going to be there. It is a candidates day as well. Max Miller is going to be there. He, of course, is the 7th Congressional District Representative, and he has opened a lot of eyes and dropped a lot of jaws with some of his recent votes, including a vote against the Take Care of America's Veterans Act. And if you want to know why he did that, he is coming to talk, and he will answer your questions, all of them. So that's a huge get right there. Also, Supreme Court Justice candidate Colleen O'Donnell. I interviewed her on this show not long ago. She is a phenomenal person to listen to. She will be there, as well as other judicial candidates, Tim Clary, Don Conway, Pamela Hawkins, as well. The national anthem is going to be performed by Rain Austin, which is going to be just incredible. There are going to be prizes. There's going to be great food. There's going to be, like I said, a phenomenal camaraderie of patriots. I'm really looking forward to this. I want you to be there. I'll be giving a speech, and I try to bring it every single time. I'm going to bring it, by the way, this Saturday to Medina County Friends and Neighbors, not to change the subject there, but this Saturday I'll be speaking at McFan. So will Peter Kirsanow. And I'll bring it as best I can on Saturday. But 1 week from Saturday will be the party and the picnic. And I really want you to be there. Please RSVP. That phone number on the screen there, 440-725-2243. Remember, if you are one of the insiders, one of the subscribers to this show, you will get the discounted price as far as admission. All right. And that admission is going to fill your belly, I promise you, with food and drink. It's going to be amazing. It's not just, a cooler with some bottles of water in it. There's going to be full refreshments and barbecue chicken, hamburgers, hot dogs, all the fixings, all the sides. It's going to be a great event. Come and join us and have a great summer day on August 1st. We really want you to be there. All right. Let me dive into the chat real quick and see what I have been missing for the entirety of the show. Like I said, we had a lot going on. But I want to talk about this war on whiteness, and the way I phrased it, ultimately here, this is the way I put it. Right there. The Smithsonian's white culture checklist. This is what they put out there. I'm trying to see the better way to see that. I guess that one's. If you believe in individualism and self-reliance and working before play and avoiding conflict and managing your time properly and planning for the future and having a nuclear family and rational thinking and protecting your property and being polite to others, you're being too white. It is whiteness and white culture and white dominant culture and white supremacy, and it must be dismantled. What a shocking thing to say. What a shocking thing to continue to teach, quite frankly. So I just want to scroll back into the comments here a little bit and see what some folks had to say. Okay. CAD, I joined late, so please forgive me if this has been discussed. The kids at work have been taught to put commas before and all kinds of other crazy things. I'm not exactly sure what that means if we're just talking about proper grammar, CAD, but okay. Charlie, every young Black person should go to a third world country for a month and return to America with appreciation for our country. It's, I would say, not just Black person, every person. If you think listen, there is a supremacy culture in America. It's not white. It's American culture. Every one of us was born with a gift. Talk about white privilege. We are American privileged. Go to visit a third world country like Charlie is just talking about. And I don't care what color are, you're going to come back and kiss the American soil. That's why there are millions of people trying to get into this country every single year. Let's see, some of these are just kind of quips and jokes. I want to look for some of the more serious comments there. Number one, Rhino says, I am not yet 50 years old, but I do remember having actually been taught in school by a liberal teacher about Booker T. Washington in the light of personal responsibility. Good. That is awesome. Listen to Booker T. Washington, not W.E.B. Du Bois. That is exactly, or Du Bois, if you will. Let's see. Not only speaking properly, but dressing properly for a job interview is a good idea. Amen. Is it white to say that? I hope not. Add this. So many similar offshoots. Consider indoor-outdoor voices. Be on your best behavior when outside the house and in someone else's home. Manners in general, almost. You sound very white supremacist with that statement. Of course, I'm being facetious. This is what the Smithsonian is teaching. All of these things are bad. Everything is changing. God forbid we should have a chance to get used to anything. I dress nice for work, but not to the point of not being comfortable. No, I'm not even talking about just going to work. Dressing appropriately for the occasion. If your work is a dress casual place, great, be casual. But when it comes to the interview, when it comes to trying to get the job, it's not white to dress nice and to speak proper English. It's not whiteness. It's just, it's a success strategy practiced by whites and non-whites everywhere. It is not white privilege or white supremacy, Smithsonian. We can go on and on like this all day. Honestly, I'm just kind of scrolling the chats here. Keep the great work up on the chat, by the way. Really appreciate that. And don't forget, I said this yesterday at the end of the show, and I'm going to say it now because I have to end the show early, like I said, due to some obligations. But please, please, please share what you are saying in the chat in the comment section so that those who are watching it on replay later on get a little motivation for commenting themselves as well. I really want to have as many people as possible engaging in the content. So that is going to do it for today. A reminder, you've got until tomorrow, end of day tomorrow, so up until Saturday, basically, to RSVP for this GOP picnic in Middleburg Heights for next Saturday. So please get around to doing that. Call or text Meg at the phone number you see there on the screen, 440-725-2243. And that's going to do it for now. But I would very much like to see the comments fill up. If anybody is watching this live or on replay, I want to see what you have to say about this suggestion, this education that's being given to people that if you are successful in America and you practice these habits, you're being too white. That's white supremacist culture. It's dangerous thinking, and it's going to lead to a lot of negative impacts for a lot of people, white and ethnic minorities. That's where we will leave it. Thanks, everybody. Be well, be safe, stay free. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.